Welcome, everybody, to the first official Party Pace podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the future of small bike shops. Will they survive? This year has seen a lot of high-profile closures of some really beloved shops. I'm thinking Golden Saddle, what's it called? Lucky Duck in Oakland announced that they're going to shut down. And to kind of stymie this or see if there's an alternative, we're going to be talking with Joe from a very small bike shop in Brooklyn, New York, 718 Cyclery, to hear about some of the tactics and really creative solutions he's using to attract customers and retain them as well. Before we bring Joe on, I do want to say, if you guys like this content, please consider supporting the channel. We still have a ton of our Save the Front Trailer stickers and our very apparently controversial no Lycra, no rules. It's just George, people. Just George. Don't get too offended. With all that said, let's bring Joe on. Joe, welcome to the live stream.
Hey, how's it going, guys? How are you?
So when we say small bike shops, like it's literally a small space that you're in. Can you kind of describe the size of your shop and what you guys do there?
Yeah. So when you say guys, take an S off of there. It's like what you guy do.
What do you guy do?
What you do. I say we a lot. I'm a one-person shop. We're 320 square feet. So what you're seeing here is like the laptop that I'm looking into is right at the tool wall, and then there's that back towards the window. So 320 square feet. It's a shop that's we've been in business since 2008 and have gone through a few evolutions and have evolved or leveled up or leveled down to where we're at now, which is just a great place.
You've right sized. So it sounds like we were talking before. You used to be in a much bigger space and manage employees, but then you shifted to this kind of owner operator model. Like, why the change?
So we started in 2008, and the idea was I was building. It was the fixed gear craze of 2007, 2008 in New York City. So everyone was building single speeds and fixies and stuff. And I'd gotten into it. I was an architect for 20 years during that or before that. I started building bikes. I built a bike in my backyard, a fixie. I built a second bike because I had so many extra parts. My neighbor's like, wow, do you sell those? And I was like, I guess so. And that was it. And then that just led into like people would just come over to my backyard for like a year and a half on the weekends just to learn how to build bikes and build projects with me. And I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I was trying to stay 5 minutes ahead of my customers. That was like, I was, running for my life because I was learning on the fly. And it was an insane amount of people that were coming through. And I felt that, and this is 2008, I felt that there was kind of this like backlash towards, things with computers and people looking to do things with their hands again and looking to kind of get back in touch with things. And certainly my experience too. I mean, I was looking to kind of build things again. I had, was in a real digital life at that point as an architect, but had a real building background. One thing led to another. My wife suggested we open a shop around the corner. We did. That shop grew. We then moved to a bigger space for about 10 years. We had about 10 employees, some of the best mechanics that I've ever seen and worked with at the time. And as we got into the late teens, we were in a neighborhood where the neighborhood was really changing. The rents were really changing, but then, the neighborhood kind of wasn't really changing. So our expenses started to really outpace, our revenue growth, and it just became a hard time and a stressful time to manage, all these employees. And, I won't get into how disparate it is to be a bike shop, but, you're like an independent city state, like making it up as you go along, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff where, and it just got to be to a point where I had a lease that was expanding and, my rent was increasing and, I had an opportunity. So we had 4 years left. This is late 2019. We had 4 years left on a lease and we're having problems financially, just kind of making it work. Salaries are increasing, everything's increasing and, the cost of living and all those things. So, I went to my landlord and said, hey, we're having some issues here. We need to deal something with the rent, or maybe I need to sublet it. And he's like, well, how about you just do half-month rent until December of 2019, and then you'll be done with the lease, which had 4 years left. I'm like, that's insane. Like, I can't believe you're offering that to me. So I tell my wife this, and she's like, oh, we should get the lawyer to look at it. I'm like, no lawyers. Like, we're done right now. You want to be done? Right. You've been on my ass for 3 years about this. We're done. So I signed it. we had a 3-year kind of a de-escalation of like selling off everything and, helping employees find new work. And everyone found work and we're all still friends. So that's a great subplot of this. But I was able to jump into this space, which is 800 feet from my house, a home I've lived in for 22 years, in a neighborhood my kids have gone to school in. Great rent. I mean, the day I moved in here, which was January 1st of 2020, so like 20 minutes before COVID started, my life was instantly better. My rent was a third of what it was. I had no payroll anymore. And I could kind of focus on what I wanted to do. And there were things about in those preceding 11 or 12 or 13 years that I'd learned that there's things I like to do and things I didn't like to do, and things that were financially viable and things that were an absolute waste of time. So I decided to kind of create a business around the things that I wanted to do. And, 3 years into that, more than 3 years into that kind of pilot program, I guess. And it's, the smile on my face really tells it all. It's really a joy. And I get to interact with some wonderful people doing the things that, sharing the things that I enjoy, sharing that with other people who also enjoy them, which is, what work should be all about, is, being around people that you enjoy.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of the specific tactics. I think one of the things that first caught my attention about your bike shop is how you sell more than just bike stuff. You're almost like a mini REI. Like, why did you make that decision to carry outdoor gear, and how's it panned out?
Yeah. So here's a tip. A funny chalkboard out in front of your store, and our chalkboard out in front of the store says like REI but smaller. I don't care how awesome you are at social media. A chalkboard on the sidewalk is like worth its weight in gold. Like all day long, people walk by, they chuckle, they know what that means, because it is kind of a weirdo kind of place. Like we sell board games now. It's like,
yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that all kind of started around 2013, 2014 in our old space, where I had a staff who they had a lot of bike touring experience amongst themselves, independently and with each other. Excuse me. In their time off, they would go on little trips, and eventually they took me along, which was great. Eventually we started doing these trips together, and eventually customers started asking, hey, can we come too? And this is 2014. And we just kind of launched this idea of like, let's go to Vermont. And we interacted with Old Spokes Home. We had some connections up there, and they kind of planned a trip with us. And we rented a van and got like 14 people, and the bikes are in one van, and we drive up and had a great time. And the interactions, like when we got back with those customers, I really felt like it's one thing for someone to walk in the shop and buy a lock and leave, and it's another thing to have like, I slept on the ground next to you when it was pouring rain. Like there's like these experiences with your community that are just way beyond retail transactions, way beyond. And, it's a long game for sure, but it's an unbelievable like a web of connections that you've make over the years when people come in. So anyway, that grew and grew and grew. And every year we're doing more and more trips. And, we were doing, since 2014, we've done, 10 to 20 trips a year. Except for COVID year, which is 2020. And then in 2021, now that I'm by myself, I'm like, I used to have employees and staff that would come with me on the trips and help plan and help sweep and all these kinds of things. And now I knew the demand was still there, and I still wanted to do this, and I wanted to build a business around bike camping, essentially. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of developed a methodology and a process for doing this on my own, in terms of safety and orientation and, getting people to volunteer to help sweep. And the things about that, and I get a decent amount of inquiries from other shops asking, how do we do it? Or, a lot of times it's questions about waivers and insurance, and certainly anyone can ask me any of those questions. I've got, the answers to those questions, I think. But it became this thing where, our whole year, which is our 2023 season, sold out in December. Like the whole year sold out for this year already. So I'm kind of scrambling to figure out, all of a sudden you're starting to be like, oh, we should grow. Oh, we should make more trips. And you start, wait a minute, isn't that the reason I'm here, is to not do that? The mantra for being here was to grow smaller, right? I wanted to be a 1 pixel wide business. And that's great. I can manage everything. If I lose a tool, it's like, well, there's only one suspect who is is under investigation for losing that tool, and it's within about 5 feet of me. I didn't go anywhere. So
I'm curious, like, what's the how many people do you usually have
Yeah,
on the trip, and what's the
sure.
format? Do you guys ride from the city, or
Yeah.
do you take the train out, or how's it happen?
Yeah, so we do a couple of different kinds of trips. We do 1 and 2 night trips, which are called micro tours. Um, and those are, about 12 to 14 of those a year. And those are, regional, right? So we'll leave from New York City, we'll leave from Manhattan. And most of those trips we're leaving and riding out of the city on bikes. A few of those trips we'll take the train out to New Jersey to do things along the Delaware Water Gap and the Delaware River into, near Trenton and all that kind of stuff. So the limit is 25 people. We have 25 people on the trip. And, invariably, I'd say half of those people have been on trips with us before. So there's a structure around the people in the community that kind of know what it's supposed to look like, right? It's not like 25 random strangers, like with me at the head. We do 3 long trips every year: spring, summer, and fall. In the spring, we do Buffalo to Albany, and that's 370 miles. So it's 6 days. In the summer, we do Pittsburgh to DC. So that's the Gap Casino. Also about 330 miles. And in the fall, we do the Catskills for a week. So, a good amount of miles, but, the big kicker there is the climbing elevation. Like the elevation numbers are pretty big in the Catskills. And, we don't charge, for the micro tours and stuff. We charge we used to charge 20. They used to be free years ago. And the problem with that is when something's free, people sign up and then they just don't show up, right? So I was trying to get insurance at a campsite for 50 people and like 18 show up. So I was like, we have to figure out a way to get people to have skin in the game. So I came up with the idea of like, $25, whatever, let's just do it, and that was perfectly fine. And we just raised it to $35 this year. And that covers like my insurance. And I, as a 1-person shop, I do clothes. Like I have a gone camping sign I put right in the window. I posted on, Google and Yelp that we're going to be closed. And, there's all kinds of notices about it because I want someone to come to the shop that didn't get the message about us being closed and see that like, oh, this must be really important to these guys. Like they're camping, like they're really out there camping. And the transaction or the interaction invariably, on the trip, people will say things like, I can't believe you only charged $35. I would have paid blah, 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 whatever. And for me, it's like if I raise the price to like $200, then you have like real expectations, then it's like, I didn't get a lobster. Like, where's my lobster? His lobster's bigger than my lobster. So it's like,
it becomes a backroads trip.
right. It becomes, very different. So 35 keeps it down. If people can't afford it, whatever, no problem whatsoever. But the thing is like, people feel like they're kind of taking advantage or they're ripping me off. But when I come back from one of those trips, I have like 500 pictures and videos and experience with gear and experience leading groups. And like, you can't tell me a company wouldn't pay like tens of thousands of dollars to go out and get those pictures, And, and again, you have to be an idiot to take a bad picture of a bike camping trip. Like you have to absolutely have the camera, your thumb over the lens, right? I mean, it does the work for you. So when I come back, I feel like I've almost taken advantage of the folks on the trip. So it's one of these things where I've heard the saying where in a business transaction, if both parties feel like they're ripping each other off, it's like the perfect business transaction. They feel like they're ripping me off. Great. I'm making out like a bandit with all this original content that, no one else in the internet has. And that further cements us, as being like, at the forefront of this in this area. Great. So I'll take it all day long. So yeah, those, and we've had, it hasn't all been roses. There's been spills and, wrecks and, there's been some not so great things happen from a crash point of view. Things have happened, right? The math of 15 trips a year times 25 people, out on the road, the algebra isn't good in terms of probabilities of something happening. And things have happened, but, we have, insurance and waivers, and we've been able to protect. And we also, we do orientation through Zoom. We do all kinds of things to get that group ready. Like there's a trail of safety and planning, that's about a month long for each one of our trips. So, so we're able to provide a framework for that.
So I'm curious, it sounds as if, like when you do the trips, it's not like the main source of income. It's a little bit of like a loss leader. Does that convert further down the line into more sales or loyalty? What's the gain for you, I guess, in doing something like this where, you're not making buku bucks?
Yeah, so like, yeah, I mean, yeah, loss leader would be a good way to, describe it. I mean, they don't lose money, but I'm gone for a weekend in the middle of May. Any bike shop that closes down in the middle of May, you better be closing down for a good reason. But what it does is it just, the way that, the internet works and the way that content works and the way that becoming, more and more of an expert at this stuff. If you think of a city of 8.5 million people and you think of not too many bike shops kind of doing this kind of stuff, if at all, maybe a few, again, I shouldn't say none. But you're just creating like this beacon that's just bringing people in to ask questions, to talk about gear. All those people on trips tell 10 friends, right? I mean, the network is exponential. It really, really is. And, those people now, when they think about buying a bike, because we sell bikes, during COVID 2020, this little space, one person has sold over 500 bikes. There's a demand, crazy. I mean, obviously it fell the last couple of years, of course, but the clip of the bikes that we sell and the custom builds that we do, that's where the money kind of is in the kind of the custom build work, and we'll do 80 to 100 frame up builds a year. But those people are coming from referrals, and those people are coming from friends of friends, and just casting this net out there in a real positive way is just capturing folks that maybe don't want a more traditional bike shop experience, because, I like right now, I have like no bikes for sale. If you walked in the door and said, I want to buy a bike, I got nothing to sell you. I got nothing. Like there's nothing here. I have nothing to sell except I can sell you the idea of a bike. Let's talk, So what we do is we order things for folks, and we've built up enough trust where people are okay with that. Enough people are okay with that for me to make a living.
Right.
But certainly if you walk into a traditional bike store and there's rows and rows of bikes, that's a very valid way to buy a bike, and a very intuitive way. I want to test ride this. I want to test ride that. These are all good things. Someone wants to test ride something here. It's like, I can't, we can't do that. I can't just order bikes for people to think about test riding. So it's kind of a weird model where, we don't do any service. We only service the bikes that we sell. We don't do any tune-ups or flat fixes. All we do is build bikes and go on camping trips. I mean, that's really it, and sell stuff. But the service side was a real challenge, getting rid of walking away from service, because when we moved into the space, there's kind of like a social, almost like a social contract. Like, you're a bike shop, you have to tune up my bike and fix my flat. And it's like, no, we don't. I can do whatever I want. Like, I can sell Golden Girls VHS tapes if I want. And I might, I mean, whatever I want. There's no social, but you used to tune up my bike. I was like, well, yeah, I used to play football in high school too. I'm like, where does it end? Like, this isn't one of those tune up for life kind of scams where, we'll tune your bike up forever if you buy a bike from us. Like, there's no contract here. So when people do walk in, and I've kind of trained the neighborhood pretty well at this point, but I do get people that walk in looking for tune-ups. And I'll say, no, it's not what we do. And they'll invariably look past me and see all the bike tools on the wall. Like the wheels kind of like, wait a minute, those are all bike tools. And I'll joke and say, oh, that's a Zoom background, or their screen is not real. It works all the time. But I send them, there's a huge a bike shop that's an institution, like 2 blocks from here. And they're a huge service shop, and it's Bicycle Habitat. I've known, Charlie forever, and he's a great supporter of us and in the industry for sure. So, the person that comes in here and they're getting a no from me, but they're also getting a recommendation, and people are so, they're leaving with something positive. Like, I don't say on the door, no service, I don't want to say no. Right. I also want to be helpful, right? If there's something that I can help them with, like today was the first nice day of the year in New York City, more or less. So we get, what I call a lot of like low level nonsense, right? Which is like people just dragging their bikes out of the basement, and the kid grew 4 inches over the winter and they have to raise their Z-post, like typical. So I'll go out on the sidewalk and help people out. I mean, I'm here to be as helpful as I can, but I'm not bringing the bike in, and I'm not putting it in the stand, because, that's just not what I do. It's, and we did that for a long time, and I've done it long enough to know that's not what I want to do. What I want to do. I hate to say it that way. And there's some shops that do really well.
What is like getting rid of service allowed you to do? Like, what's, it's vacated some space and time. Like, where do you focus that energy?
Yeah, I can make zines. I can do weird things. No, it's just made my, the way I kind of think about service and the way that I observed it and was in it for so many years. And every shop has their own kind of experience with it. And again, we had some great mechanics, and I learned a ton, hands-on. And because I feel like I came into their world 15 years ago as an outsider. So it took me a long time to, prove myself, or just, become, part of the culture in a way that was, kind of more organic than some guy opening a bike shop because he likes bikes. But getting rid of service, I think about the logistics, the tools, the expertise, the mechanic who has that experience about, French bikes from the 70s that our society and our culture doesn't reward in any way. That knowledge, like no one, there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow when you have that knowledge with the way that the bike industry is set up, so it's a real tough environment to find mechanics who really have that fire and really want to continue to do that. And it's a tough industry in terms of, gross profit margins. So there's no denying it, but, and I also thought that, the way I kind of dealt with service was that I felt it was a very, when you have a BMW and your engine light goes on, you bring it to the BMW dealer and they plug it into a console and they're like, oh, you need a new water pump. And we made like 80 million water pumps for 12 model years of BMWs. So here it is. And we're going to have the technician install it. Like, great, standardized. Like when you roll in with like a Trek from 2003, like, quick, what bottom bracket's in there? Like, I don't know. What headset? I don't know. Do we have the tool to take that out to see why the bike is creaking? So now we're going to take like an hour to like take, it's just like, so, and the other classic was, so we had bikes coming in all day long. We had a big space. The other classic is, the bike gets brought in. Maybe the person who brought it in didn't check it over and realize the person needs a new chain or cassette. Well, we're tuning the bike up and now we have to call the customer and their voicemail isn't set up. Right. So great. Now we're going to sit here with a target on our chest for another week until that customer gets pissed enough to call us to find out where their bike is. It's like, fuck. And no one wants to pay for it. I'm sorry, I cursed.
Demonetized. It's over, folks.
No, it's like no one wants. We used to have no one wants to pay for it. It's like haggle time. I only bought the bike for $50. What are you telling me it costs $350 to fix? And It's like, well, it doesn't make it a $350 bike. It brings it back from the dead to zero. Like you're not getting a $350 bike. And another employee used to say it was like he was kind of talked about it being like the Port-au-Prince Bazaar. Is what he saw a documentary once on the bazaar at Port-au-Prince in Haiti with all the bartering, like chickens and, trading goats for this and that, like the economy of bartering, at that particular, bazaar. And he's like, that's what the bike shop feels like. It's like we're endlessly bartering. When you walk into Barnes and Noble and you buy the book, you go to the counter and you pay for the book and you leave, so that, it's just like the endless. So it's a very inefficient process. And then you're dealing with a workforce who, for lack of a better term, the training that bike mechanics seem to get, or that we all get, some go are classically trained at some of the schools or had, worked in great bike shops that had programs. But the vast majority, it's like, passed down from village elders. It's like, this is how you build a box bike, Sonny, boom, boom, and like, okay, now so it's like, it's just a very inefficient workforce and a very inefficient process. And it was just like two equations and two unknowns in the equation that just couldn't solve, it was just endless. And, the guys that I had and women that I had, excellent bedside manner. We took so much time, we would, really pour through it. And for me, coming from the architecture world, I would tell them that each of these projects that we're working on, each of these bikes we're bringing in, has a budget, it has a timeline, and it has a scope, right? And those are all very corporate architecture words, but you know what? It's true. Every bike that comes in has a budget. It has a scope of services. Like we're doing this and we have a time frame. It needs to be done because you get paid X and you need to like finish X bikes a day. There's an equation here. And that was really hard to kind of like standardize in a shop that was like ours, that was the Wild West. I mean, it was just, shooting from the hip. It wasn't standardized. And, a lot of that was my shortcomings in an owner manager. We didn't have a manager for 10 employees. So it was me and the crew. And, in the end, that was a tough one because, I had a soft spot for them. I didn't want to discipline them. I wanted them to like me. You want to be the cool boss. But in the end, it's like, I'm worried. I'm up all night worried about, payroll and worried about getting them paid, but like, who's worried about me getting paid? Like
Right.
I felt like I was just on my own, and not that they didn't care about me, but when you're an employee-employer relationship, it's you are responsible for paying them for the work they did. Like that's, non-negotiable. And it just becomes a challenge. It just became a real challenge with it being such a loosey-goosey. If someone wanted to open a bike shop across the street, they could put a sign on the door that says bike shop, and they're a bike shop. Like that's it. You've done it. There's no certification. You call yourself a bike shop. Well, that's it. You're a bike shop. So, those things just really were challenging to kind of, and then, the pressure cooker of rising prices and rents going up and payrolls going up and, all these kinds of, forces that were acting on this pressure cooker just caused me to really like not enjoy it at the end and really look to try to do something different.
Yeah.
But it's given me a lot of time. I mean, you asked about like what it's given me the time to do. A lot of things. I have a great work-life balance now. I walk home. I don't take it with me. The people that are building, frame up builds with us, it's a great demographic of people to work for, because the person that's like paying, $2,000 to get a bike built, $3,000 or whatever, that's a person that by definition doesn't want it right now. Like if someone booked a bike today, it'd be, our backlog's about 4 or 5 weeks. And I let people know that. And they're totally cool with that because this is like a big thing for them. This is like, and then so I build, let's say it's 80 bikes a year. So that means like once a week, maybe a little more, someone's coming in to pick up this bike that was built for them. And, how often do you get a bike built for you? That's a once in a lifetime experience. So you're hitting a home run like twice a week, with customers for life, as opposed to, again, just selling locks and helmets over the counter. This is a really close experience. And, they send me pictures on vacation of them and their bike, like it's a really personal thing. And that, the time frame that it allows me to have with that, I'm not rushing. I'm not like, oh shit, I got 8 bikes to build this week.
Yeah.
I hit my deadlines, but I give myself the time to do it. In addition to customers walking in all day and the phone ringing, the email happening, there's no cavalry coming. I've got to, be the one that takes the garbage out. I got to clean the bathroom. I got to go to the basement to get stuff. So, it gives me the time to be a one-person shop. If I was doing service here, it would be insane. Like I would really not enjoy myself because the time would be, the logistics and the time that just wouldn't really work for me anymore. So,
right. Let's switch topics a little bit. When I posted the spicy thumbnail on Instagram, there was a lot of talk about kind of the homogenization or buying up of small bike shops by the big four. When that happens, they probably get better terms and availability in terms of the product. Like, what are things that like a non-corporate bike shop can do to stand out and still provide value and attract customers?
In New York City, it's, Trek's bought up a bunch of, they've got a real big presence and it's growing, and that's happening around the country. Specialized to some extent is doing, the same kind of thing. Years ago when we had a big shop in a big space, all 4 of the big 4 had approached me in one way or another to talk about that idea of us becoming that kind of place. And I didn't want to, I got into this to figure this out on my own. I got into this because I liked the challenge, and I got into this because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and I like that, the thrill of like not knowing, and the thrill of figuring it out, and the thrill of it being up to me to figure it out. When I was an architect, we would, I'd sit in a conference room, in an architecture firm that's been around since like the 1890s. And you're sitting there and you're like, you look at all these old pictures of all these old guys on the wall and, all the people around this conference room table. And it's like, in 5 years, I'm going to be her. In 10 years, I'm going to be that guy in that office right there. That's it was all laid out for me. And it's like, you know what? Like, I like the fact that it's like raining sideways today and I got to figure this out. Like, I got to like make something happen. The thrill of that is, I've got a family, I've got 2 kids and wife, this isn't like just winging it. There's a method, there's an urgency to making a living and making it financially viable. But the what's going on in New York City, and this sounds kind of crass, and certainly I'll say it. But it's like, I hope Trek buys every single friggin' store in New York City. Like I said it, they can buy every store they want, because every time they do that, and every time Specialized does that, or whatever, it just differentiates me more and more. Like I feel like there's this volcano that everyone's kind of running towards, this business model of a volcano, and I feel like I'm like running away from this volcano. But and I think of products. I think of things like Spur Cycle Bells, or something like fussy and cool and interesting, and that Trek store, because of the things that they have to sell, and Bontrager this, and just the way that they're set up as a corporation, they're not going to sell that stuff. Like that's a great example of, like, I sell a zillion Spur Cycle Valves because there's not a lot of other places, and I'm making a general statement, but generally that's kind of what seems to happen. And there are some smaller shops in New York City that have remained around. There's some great ones: NYC Velo, Ride Brooklyn, Bicycle Habitat, Bike Plant. I mean, there's some people that are doing some interesting stuff, but it's just the idea behind this homogenization. I think there's a lot of opportunity for people that are creative and kind of still enjoying being in the industry. There's a lot of opportunities that when Trek takes over Store X, well, now Store X is going to jettison brand A, B, and C, and those things are now kind of devalued and available. So you're able to kind of bring in bike brands. You're able to maybe there was a brand that was sold at a store, and now it's a Trek store, and Trek's like, you're not selling that brand anymore. Well, now, I can negotiate from a position of an advantage, because I'm offering, space on a retail floor in New York City. That kind of dynamic is really interesting. And I read a lot about it. It fascinates me, the dynamic of when we opened in 2008, again, I always joke, it was like the fixed gear craze of 2007, 2008 in New York City. A lot of shops opened, including me. But a lot of them are gone. There's not a lot of hole in the wall places anymore. And for whatever reason, and I think, there's a lot of luck involved. I had some great employees that kind of helped me, over the hump for many years, and it kind of jettisoned, after 11 or 12 years of that existence, it kind of like parachuted me out of a plane with like enough tools, not bike tools, but like enough kind of ideas about a business that I could kind of start this crazy idea and see really where it went.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't begrudge, and the thing is, like with mechanics and things like that, it's hard. It was, and we were kind of dealing with this in the tail end of our shop when we had mechanics. Excuse me, I'm burping. A mechanic that was working at 718 Cyclery, like, unless that person killed me and became me, there's like no way to go up. Like, and then you think about like 4,000 independent city-state bike shops across the country, where if you're a mechanic, like there's no way to go, right? There's no place to go. There's no way to go. We tried doing health insurance. That was a disaster. We tried, all these things. And you think about what Trek offers, in terms of schedule, in terms of benefits, in terms of training, in terms of a corporate, a way up the ladder. That's impressive. Like, I think about, if I was a young bike mechanic, I'd probably cut my teeth at Trek for a number of years before I, kind of did something on my own. But, there aren't too many opportunities, I feel, in New York City, at least, for a young mechanic to have a future and to have a living wage and to have, the chance to kind of, move into something else, maybe at the national level or whatever. So, I mean, I don't begrudge them, and I don't hate them in any way. It is what it is. I can't control it. But again, if they want to buy every shop on the planet, that's fine with me.
I remember when we had Kyle Kelly on from Golden Saddle, and he kind of spoke to a similar theme where, they curated their product around things that people could only see in the shop. Maybe some cool blingy thing online, but if you wanted to touch it and feel it, you'd have to go to the shop. It would become a destination to visit in order to see said cool thing.
Yeah. It's the same thing. I mean, people walk in here and they're like, oh my God, this is like, it's, you can't really see it, but it's, curated with a lot of fun stuff that you just can't see anywhere else. And again, it's a lot of things. People say that all the time. Like, I've never seen one of these in real life. It's a bag from this company, or, we do.
So, what are some weirdo things that you carry that most people won't see in like a typical bike shop, I guess?
We do a lot of, Swiss Army knives are kind of fun, but those aren't like weird. I mean, things like we sell a lot of swimming goggles, which is like, there's like no other, we sell a lot of like camping gas, the gas for the stoves, in New York City, like do this math real quick. There's 8.5 million people, and there's 3 places to buy that gas. It's REI, a big place called Paragon, and us, right? So there's opportunity there, I think, right? And like, things like that, where you're just like, wait a minute, like I got a couple calls for tennis balls last week. I'm like, maybe I'm gonna get some tennis balls in. Like, what the heck, like. Who knows? Like stand-up paddle boards. I sell a bunch of stand-up paddle boards. I don't know anything about stand-up paddle boards, so that's kind of a weird one for sure. But I just kind of like, you hear what people are asking for from an outdoorsy point of view. And it seems like, and I hate to say this, but like the further and further I get away from being a bike shop, like the better it is. I hate to say, it sounds so deflating to say it that way, but like, I don't go to industry events anymore. I don't like follow all kinds of stuff anymore. I don't like read Bike Rumor every day. I just kind of like am a hermit, and I come here every day, and I like the people that I interact with. Like, we sell board games now, like that's, they're all nature and outdoor based and stuff, but we're doing really well with board games. So it's like, things that, that just take off in weird ways.
I mean, I do think they're like, I remember when I first got introduced to the Rivendell reader in the early aughts. He would sell lots of like weird bike adjacent things, but it's very endearing, but still on brand. I feel like bike people are generally outdoor people.
But we used to think, like the Venn diagram of like bike tourers, people that are into mushrooms, people that like playing disc golf, board gamers. It's like the same circle, pretty much. It's the same people over and over again, and which is great because I like all those things. So it's like perfect. Yeah, it's like you're kind of you're shooting fish in a barrel. Is like, I hate to use that term, but like, now that we have board games in here, 50, and we've had them since probably January. 50% of the people that walk in, we end up talking about board games. Like, whoa, you have that game, or I played this. It's like, it's a weird. There just aren't that many places in New York City to kind of do that and to kind of go and nerd out with some dude and talk about like a freaking game. So it's the fun part of kind of curating a collection that's constantly moving forward and constantly kind of still providing what people want, the staples of the bike industry: locks, helmets, lights, pumps, and just really focusing on like, all right, that's the pump I really like. That's the pump I'm selling. Like, I'm not selling like 8 different pumps. Like, that's the one I like. We used to, in our old location, we used to put out a bunch of different pumps for customers to use all day, as a, just to have on the floor. And, some would break, expensive ones would break, cheap ones would break. But the one that worked, I mean, there's a Park Tool one that's like $45. Like, that one always won. So it's like, that's the one we're selling. Like, that's it. I don't need to sell $90 pump or $20 pump. That's the one. So like the things in the store, because it is such a small store, I kind of tell people, like, if I was selling an item and the item got returned a bunch because it was defective or it sucked, that would be, that would make me look bad. I'd have to do the work to refund them. It would take a lot of my time. So I kind of, if I have a product that's doing that, I get rid of it. So what I kind of joke is that everything in the store is kind of vetted in a way, right? If I don't hear back, if I've sold like 40 of these lights in a month and I don't see them back, I guess they're doing good. So I guess I'm going to keep selling them, So it's kind of like the self-vetting process, that self-leveling process. And we just kind of find the things that we, things like climbing chalk. I don't climb. I don't rock climb. I sell climbing chalk, and I sell those chalk bags. I don't know anything about those things. If people ask about them, it's like, I have a distributor. I can get those. Like, why not?
Right.
So, but
cool.
Yeah, I mean, the swimming goggle dilemma is an interesting one. I tell my wife, if I give you $100 to buy swimming goggles within an hour, like, what would you do? And there's like nowhere to go. Like all these cool mom and pop stores are all kind of gone. Like, what would you do? Go to Target or So like that's where there's like this great opportunity in this homogenization of the bike industry, and also people wanting to shop local. I feel people a lot of people will come in and kind of like, virtue signal, like, I could have shopped online, but I like supporting you. They like tell you this. It's like, thank you so much. They like to hear it. There's a lot of that kind of Amazon guilt. They like to hear themselves say that, like, I shop local.
Yeah.
All right, which is great. I mean, I get it. And we live in kind of a neighborhood where there's a lot of that guilt, I imagine. They want to see us succeed. That it's like, in any neighborhood across the country, vacant storefronts are no fun. I mean, there's no tax revenue. It looks depressing. It's not a vibrant thing. And A lot of your
Yeah.
money, I think it's like 64% of your money stays local when you shop local in terms of, sales tax and employment and that kind of thing. So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
an argument as old as time itself. I always think of like, there's certain things in retail that are like this is not, I think of like a guy selling olives in like Mesopotamia, like 4,000 years ago. Like, it's the same problem. It's like the same, he needs to buy them low, got to sell them for more than he bought them. He's got to have the olives that people want. But there's nothing there's nothing new about like anything that I'm really doing. Like, I don't find it's not innovative in a way. Like, wow, no one ever thought to sell board games next to Swiss Army knives. Like, whoa, it's not like that. But it's just a combination of being positive about it and really enjoying it. And again, enjoying what I do. It exudes, from social media to all these things. And the social media thing, I mean, we don't do as well as you on Instagram, but for a little shop, we do pretty good. And what I always tell people, ask like, what social media platform, like, team do you use? I'm like, I don't use a team, like stuff. And like, if it's 5 things in a day, well, that's what it's going to be. If it's nothing for 2 days, that's what it's going to be. Well,
that's my strategy too. That's why occasionally it'll be like a mix of watercolors,
yeah,
bad bike hacks, and stickers.
Yeah, my cats, like I'm starting to kind of like put the non-bike shop stuff on stories just to kind of like just to parse it out a little bit. But yeah, the other rule is, like I was telling you earlier, if I have to set up a shot, that means I'm doing it wrong. Like, the social media stuff has to be a direct result of what I'm already doing anyway. Hey, I'm packing for a bike packing trip next week. Well, let's make a video about packing for a bike packing trip next week, because that's what I'm doing right now. In terms of like set up the lighting and like take 2 and take 3 and production assistants and cameras, like, I don't do any of that. It's just, and I think, and I'm a terrible speller, and I have like spelling errors in every post that I post just about. But I think it kind of comes through as like, it's kind of authentic. It's me, for better or for worse. It's not a bot or anything like that. It's me.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, engaging and attracting new customers. It seems like you hold events at the shop. You do breakfast outside. Like, how do those things work? Does it really bring customers in?
Yeah. So I'm constantly like thinking of things to, like, we used to do a lot of events in our old shop. We had a big space. In this shop, we really don't have the space to do that. So we teach classes down at a coffee shop called Principles, which is newly opened last year. A woman there who's a big cycling fanatic and opened a big coffee shop where you can roll your bike in. And so we've done like all kinds of bike packing classes down there, for free. I mean, one of my things I'm really feel strongly about is any class that I teach, it should be free. I mean, that's just the way I think about it. So we've done some bike maintenance classes down there too. I'm kind of like drifting away from that a little bit because it doesn't really interest me too much, but I know there's a huge demand. So I'm trying to fill the demand, but it's not terribly interesting. So we started this thing called Breakfast Outside in February or January. I came up with the idea just because, you're thinking about ways to, hey, it's another 28-degree day. What am I going to talk about? Like, what am I going to do today? So we had this idea of like, hey, first and third Thursday, let's go. And we're right near a huge park here in Brooklyn that just redid this barbecue area. Let's just go on every other Thursday or first and third Thursday of the month. And let's just, cook out on picnic tables and make, everyone can bring their little stoves and, aero presses and all those kinds of crazy things. The turnout was amazing. I mean, we've done 4 of them so far, and they've all been like kind of freezing cold, in the low 30s, and sometimes it was raining. But like vendors are like sending me stuff to give out as a raffle. Joe at Sturdy Bag, he's a great friend of mine. I'm like, just send me like someone returns something, or you have like a factory second where you like missed the stitching. Just send it, and we have a raffle and we give all that stuff off. Swift sent us some stuff. Take a trip. I mean, a bunch of Forager. A bunch of, and so people are like, we have a whole bunch of stuff queued up for the subsequent trips because it's fun, but it's just a great way to kind of get the community together and just talk and see old friends. And just, it really does, it does build a community around like, folks remembering like, oh yeah, I got to stop by the shop and, check this out or check that out. Like, you're just kind of getting, it's something to talk about. It's something to easily photograph again, because it's really easy to take pictures of people making food. And it's just, and it's free, and there's there's another group that started in Marin County, and there's another group that's going to start in Minnesota. Like, so we're going to have chapters or something, you know, so it's going to be like this weird thing. And I know there's a lot of coffee outside stuff, and, you know, there's a ton of that stuff, and for sure. And I'm sure there's a lot of, like, we didn't invent like making breakfast outside on a biweekly basis. Right. But, you know, able to promote it and get excited about it. And it's a blast. Like, and it's a lot of fun, and it's something to talk about and something to do during some of those cold months. I started making these zines because, you know, people would come in and ask about our micro tours, and they would say, like, all the time, they say, do you have a brochure? They would always ask if we had a brochure. And it's like, what is this, like a cruise line, like a travel agent or something? Like a brochure? Really? People are still asking, but enough people were asking. I was like, I'm just going to make a zine. So I made this little zine about our schedule, you know, printed it out and folded it up. And it was a huge hit. I mean, it's free. And I just started making zines about all kinds of things, like camp cooking or some bike pack stuff, or, you know, if I have an idea, I can just sit down and draw it and just fold it up, and I get a zine. Something to post about. We were doing these history rides in the fall that we're going to do again. It's called the Obscura Cycling Club, which is just getting out and seeing local history in Brooklyn, you know, stuff that you know, that kind of buried by the urban condition, but there's some great Revolutionary War history and all kinds of stuff. So just constantly engaging and not selling. Like, it's a very, like with Instagram, I'm kind of careful about like posting products for sale, like all the time. Like, I feel like I build trust with people through social media, and I don't want to, you know, all of a sudden like reel them in and be like, all right, now buy stuff, you know? So it's a soft sell. You know, I am a business, and we are trying to, you know, make a living, but you know, I'm very careful about, you know, kind of, you know, I'm not really a salesman. I'm kind of selling the idea of the shop, but, you know, not a particular, like some people could sell, you know, anything. I mean, there are people that just have that innate skill.
And I think it's a give or take, because it's like there's a similar discussion in like the creator space on YouTube. Like, you know, you can watch I've made over 1,100 videos. You can watch them all for free. And I hope you find at least some educational or entertainment value in each of them. But that, you know, maybe not expectations, the wrong word, but, you know, hopefully people have gotten enough value from the free stuff that they can access at home, like this live stream, that when we do come out with a product, then, you know, it's not like twisting their arm. They want to keep the content train going, or they want to, you know, keep your bike shop alive. Before we go any further, we're about 47 minutes in. We've got 234 people in the chat. If you guys have questions for Joe, put them in the comments below. I saw that there is one person here that was this. I like this one from Chauncey Young. Hello from the Bronx. Living in New York for 2 decades, has never been to your shop. So hopefully you'll have them visit. Have you found, has it happened yet where people maybe follow you or your Instagram from other states and come to the shop because it's become a bit of a destination?
Yeah, it's a little weird. I mean, you probably have the same thing, but people will come in and say, you know, we're in town for a wedding from Minnesota, and I follow you, and I really wanted to come and see the store. And it's like, okay, you know, it's or I've read everything you've posted. I've watched all your videos, and it's like, okay, it's a little strange. And I think that hold on one second. I'm just gonna get a hard candy here because I'm coughing a little bit. So there is that. I mean, I don't want to call it a creepy factor. Excuse me one second while I get a butterscotch.
I mean, it just means that the engagement or the outreach tactics are working, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's really it's actually heartwarming when someone comes in from overseas and like, you know, I wanted to visit you when I was in town, and when they come in, you kind of want them to have a good experience. You know, you want them to, you know, come and you know, they've taken the time to come visit. You know, you want to provide, you know, answer their questions and talk to them, but yeah, it is a little sometimes a little weird because people like really hang on every word sometimes, and I don't intend that to be the case, and I have to really think about it.
Yeah. So let's say we've got some comments here. Bought a 6 Moon tent from Joe based off his use. There is someone else that was.
Yeah, we rent camping gear. Like, I don't think.
Oh, do you? That's cool.
I don't know if there's. I mean, REI probably does. I'm sure. but and it's for beyond bike stuff. For people are using it for car camping or hiking, because I mean, people don't want to. If you're living in an apartment, you don't want to own it necessarily. You want to rent it and maybe bring it back. So we rented stuff years ago, and that it wasn't really well managed by me, but I just had this coughing fit, and I'm like, ugh, I'm all flustered now. But yeah, we're doing well with like renting gear, and it's like not even renting gear to people going on our trips. It's just renting people that are renting tents, sleeping bags, sleeping pads. So yeah, we're gonna see where that goes this year. It's kind of a pilot program. But again, in a city where people are living in smaller situations in terms of apartments and things, maybe they don't have space for a tent or sleeping bag they're going to use twice a year.
Right.
And there's a huge opportunity for that kind of stuff here. I would think if you were a big company that wanted to rent a lot of gear, but I don't think there really is anyone doing it. But
yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like, one of your advantages being a one-person operation is that you're agile, that you can kind of turn the ship pretty quickly to anticipate a trend or maybe follow your interests and see where it goes, rather than say like working at a big corporate bike shop and you have to push it up the ladder and get someone's approval, and then legal has to look at it.
Legal. I mean, the nautical theme I use a lot. It's like, I feel like I can raise and lower the sails pretty quickly, like really quickly if I have to. Like, hey, unicycles are in, let's go for unicycles, But what I would always tell my wife is that, because I'm a person that comes up with a lot of ideas, and certainly in a shop environment, we have 10 employees. You have to kind of sell them and get them excited about some of these ideas, and some of them are good, some of them are not good. And the ones that I thought were good, if they're not into it or involved or like jazzed by it, it's like going to be dead in the water, right? So the two things I would think about with ideas is that you want to have just one more good idea than bad ideas. You want to stay like one ahead, one more good idea than bad ideas. And the second is like, when I do decide to do something, it has to be something I can get out of pretty fast, right? Like buying 100 unicycles because I think unicycle prices are going to go down or whatever. That's a bad idea, because it's going to take me like a decade to get out of that. But for instance, when I got into board games, I made a small, maybe $200 or $300 order. I knew that like, even if like it didn't work out, I could just sell them at cost and just get out of it if I had to get out of it. But I had a friend who was a big friend of the shop for many years, and one of the things he said two things. One of the things he would always say was get off your losers. And by that, he was a guy who worked in the stock market, and he was talking about stocks and trades, and if you have a stock that's doing bad, like the sooner you get off it, the better, right? It's not coming back. So he would always say, get off your losers, right? And that, to me, I always took to be like inventory, things taking up space, bad ideas. Let's just get going, like get off it and get moving. Don't be married to it. And the second thing he would always say was make every trade. And again, coming from the stock market, that meant something to him. What that always meant to me was like, you never know who's walking in the door. You never know the phone call that's going to, you're going to sell a $5,000 bike in like a 30-second phone call when someone calls up, and you just never know. And the thing is, like, I think about like what, this sounds kind of weird, but like, what my superpower is. My superpower is I'm a one-person shop that's really responsive to customers when they come in, and follow up with them on emails and that kind of thing. And that's what I'm good at. And that's what differentiates me. There's a lot of shortcomings to be a one-person shop. There's a lot of things I can't do, but I really lean into the things that I can do. Like we have this bike selector thing on our website where someone can go through and kind of like, just, kind of put in some parameters, and let's talk about some bikes that are available that we can get for you. Not custom builds, but like, and that's the person that, doesn't want to go to a big bike shop and see 80 bikes and have a salesman on commission kind of sell them something they don't need. For me, it's like what I do is I sell it as, I'm the person that's going to talk to you about your bike. I'm going to order your bike. I'm going to build your bike, and I'm going to be with you to make sure, it's a one-person point of contact. It's not like you walk into a store and it's like, hey, I was dealing with Manny. Is he still here? Manny's not here. It's like, that's the guy I was working with about this. It's like that kind of thing. And again, I don't want to disparage that business model, because that is the bike shop business model. It's a bigger thing than us. We definitely are not the norm. But, enough people want to deal with a singular person, and you build up enough trust that it's a viable way to work.
Yeah.
And again, I have no bikes for sale right now, like none, like absolutely none.
Yeah.
And
There's this stoic saying that the obstacle is the way, where
what is it?
the obstacle is the way, that, when like you may have a shortcoming, but there's always some way to flip it and leverage it
Yeah,
into an advantage. Like for us, it's like, I'm not a road cyclist. We were talking about this before we went live. There's no way I'm going to out GCN, but I can really lean into the weirdo bike stuff, and I can do that well. And,
yeah,
we're not going to reach everybody, but we're going to reach, those few people, and they're hopefully going to sink in.
yeah.
So it's kind of, realizing, working within the limitations and turning
Right.
into leverage. So.
I read this like when I was an architect. There's this this idea about when you're an architect, you kind of want to get good, and this is in any corporate scenario, I guess, but you kind of want to get good at the things that you're not good at. It's just human nature. Like, oh, I need to get better at this part of my professional development. I need to kind of get better at this. And I had a boss who gave me a self-help book, and I'm not a self-help book kind of guy, but I read it because it was my boss. And I was like, all right, this is like 2004, 2005. It was called something like Now. It's called like Now Discover Your Strengths. I mean, I can hear like the Phil Hartman voice, like on The Simpsons, like smoke yourself thin, and I read it, and what it talked about was like taking all of the time that you spend and all the energy that you spend to try to get good at the things you're not good at, and invest that into the things you're good at to become just like the best at it. And I was like, that's a great idea. And that's in architecture. I was like, all right, this is what I'm good at. This is what I like to do. And I just went for it. And salary increased. Like it was crazy. It worked so well. So I have my business plan. I put it up to the screen. I don't know if anyone can see this or not. This is literally my business plan, and I have it on the wall. And there's 3 circles. It's what I like to do, what I'm good at doing, and what I can make money doing. So I want to try to hit 2 out of those 3 probably in any given situation. But that's really it. Like there's no forecasting. There's no, I do my books every day. My wife's a bookkeeper, so I've gotten trained. So I'm pretty on top of the financials of what the shop is doing and understanding that pretty well. Yep. And our liabilities and assets and blah, blah, blah. But just, being like leaning into this, like, hey, bike camping in New York City, that seems to be my thing. And no one else is really doing it. And we've got a great track record and I enjoy it. So let's just go for it. Like, let's just really lean into that and enjoy it. I mean, the other thing is that people that do bike camping, bike touring or bike packing, whatever you want to call it, it's a generalization too, but they tend to be people that I enjoy being around, from, their outlook on our society, from the way they look at the environment, from doing things kind of communally and collaboratively. It's not an aggressive, racing community or something like that. I mean, people that do this stuff are looking out for each other and helping each other. And that's what I want to be around. I want to be part of that kind of community. And that's what kind of leaning into this bike camping culture has allowed us to do, is really, just be part of, you're with someone the first time they've ever slept outside before. I have a couple people, we have a trip next week, our first trip of the season, a couple people that have never slept outside before, and they're freaked the hell out. But I know it's going to be fine. I know where we're going. It's going to be fine. But, to be with someone during such a monumentous kind of, situation with their bike, or for a lot of folks, it's the longest they've ever ridden their bike for, or right. You're with people, 25 people, a good 15 of them, they're some kind of personal best somewhere, in that day. And you're with them for that. And it's just amazing. It really, really is.
Cool. We're getting close to the hour. There's a couple questions that might be interesting to ask.
Yeah.
So Jason asked, liability seems to be a fun killer.
Yep.
How do you insure your trips? Do you transport or meet at the trail?
Meet at the trail. But by trail, you mean Lower Manhattan? So the liability part, we, the business itself has insurance. We also have a separate insurance for the trips that we do. There's companies out there that insure these kinds of things, running events, bicycle events and stuff like that. We use McKay. I think they're in the upper Midwest. I forget where exactly. But for them, what they require from me to insure it is they require, I have a waiver that's a valid waiver. So I had a waiver written by, a customer who's also a lawyer in New York City. They always say you shouldn't just download waivers off the internet and just make them your waiver. It was really written by someone. So the insurance company takes that waiver and they vet it. They also take, I produce a ride program for every trip that we do, and that's all on our website. Anyone can download these. They're free. And that is a safe, it's emergency action plan, and it's a kind of a call sheet for the trip. What's going to happen. It's about 6 or 7 pages. We do safety and orientation meetings on YouTube that are recorded, so everyone has an opportunity to see. So there's a trail of safety. So the insurance side, it's not expensive. I mean, it's maybe $800 a year for insurance, and it covers. Everyone has to sign the waiver, which is fine. So it's. I see the question from Jason. So it doesn't, and we've had things happen, and I'll just leave it at that are just like things that I wish I never saw, and things that in terms of wrecks and things, it's been horrible. A couple instances. I mean, it just is, but it's the nature of what we do, and it's a dangerous thing that we do essentially. But we've been protected by that trail of, this isn't a shit show here, right? We have a history of being safe, right? If we were putting on dangerous events, we're not making them any more dangerous by illegally riding in traffic or illegally riding on bike paths. And, we're not forcing anyone to do it. We're not making it more dangerous than it is. It's actually safer when you're in a group, and it's safer when the group is all trained and has been orientated about the route and about, what's coming up down the road. And then, so on our 1 and 2 night trips, we do leave from Lower Manhattan. So it's leaving that's the trailhead, I guess. And, our overnights, 1 and 2 night trips are usually 50 to 60 miles each way, up and back, northern Westchester County, or out to the Delaware Water Gap, which is where New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania meet. For our longer trips, we're obviously taking the train to Pittsburgh or the train to Buffalo, and then we're kind of riding back. And for those longer trips, what we do is we have a start point, on our spring tour, we're starting from the corner of Lakeshore and Erie at 9 o'clock on Sunday, July 9th. I don't care how you get there. Figure it out. Take the train. I'm not shipping your bike. I'm not taking your bike. I'm not driving your bike. Everyone's got to figure it out and get there. And then we start that morning, and everyone figures it out, obviously, but it just takes the burden off of me to have to deal with the logistics of everybody. We're all adults and can figure it out.
Yeah.
But they are,
cool.
The liability has protected the business. So it's important.
Yeah. So here's another question. So Norberto asks, how much do you pre-purchase for the builds? Do you order components after you've confirmed the build, or do you have a stock of stuff that you like to put?
So what we were doing during the pandemic is that, because things were so all over the place, if I saw, let's say TRP Spire brakes, we use those a lot, and expect those out in a lot of builds. They're not available. Oh shit, there's 10 of them available from QBP. I'm going to order all of them right now. So I have a little area downstairs in my basement that's like a staging area. So I was trying to buy as much as I could during 2020, 2021, 2022. Because if I didn't, I was buying it at retail at Universal Cycles, right? It's how do those guys get it? And sometimes you get stuff from them and it still has the QBP box on it. It's how on earth did these guys get this? So what I was doing is kind of, and we were joking. It was you're kind of buying brake futures. I'm going to buy these brakes now, and they're going to be worth this in a year from now. And that was kind of fun. It was fun. I mean, but during some of those leaner times, 2021, 22, there were a certain percentage of things that I just couldn't find, right? If it's a rival shifter or whatever it was, and I'd have to buy it on Universal Cycle. So, buying it at retail and then selling it at retail isn't part of my business plan. It doesn't really work. But it was, maybe sometimes 15 to 20% of a build that would be that. So that would eat into my margin for sure. But, the customer doesn't care, and they paid for a certain thing, and that I've got to get it done. I'm not charging them more. I'm not charging them extra. I knew we'd get through it. So some bikes, and I charge a healthy labor rate on those, projects. So, in the end, it always worked out. But now that things have kind of leveled off in the world that I exist in, I'm now back to kind of ordering kind of on demand. I monitor every week or so. I kind of, monitor through queue, there's 50 of those cranks left. I don't need to crazy order anything. They're going to be there next week kind of thing. And with the industry being kind of oversaturated, the stuff is sitting, you're starting to see discounts. But yeah, the challenge of financially managing the builds, it's important because you're for us, let's call it a $3,000 bill. That person's giving you $3,000. And what I do now is right away, I don't care if my rent's due. I don't care if I could really use that $3,000 for something else. Those parts get ordered like instantly, because in the end, my landlord can wait or whatever, whatever it is. But that person, it's not their problem that, it's a slow month or whatever it is. So that stuff gets ordered like right away. And we've got a good process. We have a Google Doc that we use, and I've been using that for over a decade. In that, the process is someone will fill out a form on our website about a custom build, and they'll there's some questions in there that I kind of, there's some kind of like, there's questions that I kind of, when people answer them a certain way, I kind of get a good sense of them. But I always tell people that when it comes in, it's kind of like a police sketch artist. The person's like, I'm thinking about a bike and, had a mustache and crazy hair, so what I then do is take that information that comes in and use with this Google Doc template that I have and create, put in the parts. I have a template, pull down menus and blah. I've developed this thing over the years, where it's, pricing's all there, it all gets updated and everything. And the secret is, like, this is the big secret for the custom builds. When you send that Google Doc out to someone, like, hey, I have an email, like this is the draft parts list. I tell them how to use it. This is blah blah blah. That person is getting a document that's online and shared, and they feel like they have, and they can like pull down menus and change things. Like, I don't want Rival, I want Apex. They can hit a pull down menu and everything changes. But you're giving them ownership of their project, as opposed to me making a PDF and be like, here's your bike, take it or leave it. I'm giving them a document that there's pictures, there's links to pictures, there's places to put comments, and this thing becomes like this. And I've done thousands of these. Like, the hit rate is pretty good. I have thousands of templates of bikes that were mocked up through Google Docs. Like, I could type in like, Soma Wolverine 1x11 and get like 5 different bikes that I've done that maybe I built them, maybe I didn't build them, but all the references are there and all the compatibility issues are all there. So it's a huge data set at this point too, which is really helpful, because I can, kind of blast through these rather quick in terms of, getting information back to the customer so they can take a look. So, and that the whole shop was kind of built around that idea way back in 2008, like building bikes with people, for sure. Yeah. So it's kind of evolved in a really fun way. And, when I had a bunch of employees, I could lean on them for things I wasn't really good at or didn't want to do, or hydraulic brakes, like, oh, why don't you do this build, or wrapping bars. I'm like, nah, I'm not that great at it. I'm all right. But now that I'm here, and again, it's been 3 years, it's like, there's no cavalry coming. Like, you don't know how to bleed like, Shimano brakes from, whatever. You better learn it right now. It's like, there's no cavalry. There's no Tijan like, hey, can you help me with this? Or, hey, none of it. So, which has been great, because it's been the next part of my career was a trial by fire once again. But things like bar taping, like I had some amazing people that would just wrap bars just impeccably. And I was like average. I wasn't anything special, but it's like, well, now I got to become a student of this. And I wrap 150 bars a year, easy, if not more. And I, got really good at it. I had some, great teachers, but, again, there's no one else. The buck stops here, right? There's nobody else that's going to help. So you got to figure it out, which is good. I mean, I like that kind of reliance.
So I guess by like just doing the custom bike build model, you must be fairly insulated from, the overstock that lots of other shops are experiencing right now. And
oh yeah. My inventory is 0. I got no bikes, but that was kind of by design. And yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it just probably frees up a ton of capital otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, what happens is, I think that there are a lot of shops nearby that are overstocked and selling things at a discount. So people are going there to buy bikes, as opposed to maybe I'm losing customers a little bit because there's some good deals out there for sure. But, I feel for these shops that, that have to kind of get rid of. I mean, we used to have, inventory, and you're pre-ordering bikes and, $40,000, $50,000 a year pre-orders, which was a lot for us at the time. But now it's like, I don't have to do any of it. And, the brands that I'm with, and the brands, when we moved to this 1-person operation, some of my vendors were like, really? Like, that doesn't sound like it's going to work. And it's like, well, this is how it's going to be. And, the brands that stuck with me, brands like the KBP, universe of products, All City Salsa, Surly, Kona, brands like the brands that like believed in me and like saw the value in what I did and stuck with me as a one-person shop. I mean, it's been great. I mean, certainly I'm not, I'm ordering ones and twos. When I order a bike from, someone comes in and wants to buy a bike from Kona, I have to order it, and the shipping sucks, right? And my deal, the shipping sucks, whatever it is. But I get the customer to pay for the shipping at this point, and I do the labor for free because I'm here all day anyway. It's like that's what I'm doing. So I kind of make them pay for shipping, and then I try, I say, hey, you're paying for shipping, but I'm building the bike for free. And in their mind, there's more value in getting a free bike built, which is, building a bike out of a box is certainly a skill. I don't know if it's worth a couple $100. I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but that's the way I mitigate the fact that I'm getting horrible shipping rates on ordering one bike at a time. Right. Is make the customers pay for it, and they don't mind. Like, they don't mind at all. I mean, I'm upfront with them. No one bats an eye about that at all. But yeah, to not have money tied up in inventory where, I still have 2022 bikes, 2023 stuff's rolling in, 2024 stuff's coming in August. It's like, fuck, I can't.
Demonetized.
I really feel for. I see pictures on Instagram of like, just lines and lines of bikes, on shop floors, and certainly, I mean, yeah, it seems like that's a tough route to go down, and then you add employees onto that, and it's a tough industry. It really, really is. And I feel like I'm kind of off to the side of it, in a weird way. Like, I don't feel like, the things I read about in Brain, I don't feel like a lot of that really affects me at all. It's just like a little, it's a weird thing. And I'm very, very lucky. I'm very fortunate.
Cool. Well, we're at an hour and 11 minutes, and we've still got 240 people in the chat.
Let's talk about the person that says Joe is an absolute Brooklyn legend. Talk about more about who that person is.
There you go. If you guys have been enjoying this chat with Joe at 718, definitely consider supporting the channel by joining us on Patreon or buying some stickers. And Joe, if people want to, I don't know, buy stuff from you or go on your trip, where should they go? You've got a website, you've got the grams, and you have a YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, the YouTube channel. So the website, I do all the website stuff. The website is 718c.com, which when we got it, we were kind of apparently one of the last few months before 4-letter kind of URLs were kind of all taken up, which was really strange. But about a year after we got our URL in 2008, there were no more 4-letter URLs. So it's 718c, as in Charlie.com. And, there you'll find our Instagram stuff. There you'll find our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is fun. We have a lot of how-to videos. Videos of all the trips that we do, all kinds of weird little things. Instagram, we do really well with Instagram. I think that's a really great forum. I like the visual side of Instagram. Mm-hmm. So those are the 3 things that I would suggest if people want to learn a little more. We have an online store. We sell all kinds of cool stuff. We're moving our online store right now from one server to another. So the online store isn't totally populated, but you'll find some cool stuff there for sure. But yeah, that'd be awesome. And it's such a wonderful community to be part of. I'm really like, I'm off tomorrow. Monday's my day off, and I'm looking forward to coming in on Tuesday. It sounds so dopey, but it's so true. I mean, it really, really is.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm going to take us home here. Thank you, Joe, again, for being on the first official Party Pace podcast now that YouTube is doing podcasts. Speaking of which, this should be in a playlist. I think I've spoken to about 80 or so different people from all different walks of life in the cycling industry. So if you enjoyed this, definitely check out that playlist. Check out the links below. And as always, keep the supple side down. And okay.